We are following breaking news. Luigi Mangione appeared before a federal judge in New York shortly after waiving extradition in a Pennsylvania court earlier this morning. Back with me in Studio 57 is CBS's senior coordinating producer for crime and public safety, who has been closely following this case, what happened in court, and how did Mangione present himself. He appeared calm in the footage as he was escorted, and his demeanor remained consistent in court. We have reporters inside sending us updates. He walked into the courtroom and nodded to his legal team. Interestingly, his defense team was led by a husband and wife duo, and there were no family members present, just the two attorneys and an FBI special agent who worked on the case. The courtroom wasn't overcrowded. As the hearing progressed, things took a turn when his defense attorney pointed out that, in her 3 decades of practice, she had never seen federal charges brought in this way. This follows a series of 11 charges from the Manhattan District Attorney, including first-degree murder related to terrorism. The justification from yesterday's proceedings indicated that the act was intended to instigate terror among the civilian population. The justification for the charges centers on the claim that the act was meant to instill fear among civilians. There are many questions about this decision. The federal authorities could have chosen not to bring the charges and allowed the district attorney to handle the case, potentially prosecuting it as first-degree murder, which, if convicted, could lead to life in prison without parole. A very severe sentence. The federal murder charge could also result in a life sentence. However, the federal prosecutors may believe they have a stronger case and are more likely to secure a conviction. Still, many questions remain. One of the key concerns involves the relationship between federal and state charges. Since this was a federal arraignment, does this mean the federal charges will take precedence and the federal trial will happen before any state proceedings? It certainly appears so. Yesterday, it was reported that the feds would move forward with filing charges, which changes the landscape of the case. Although the NYPD had prepared for a potential transfer to the state courts, the feds are now taking the lead. At the same time, we were observing his extradition to New York for the charges brought by the Manhattan District Attorney. He was expected to be transported to a building where the district attorney's legal proceedings are conducted. However, last night, we learned that federal authorities would file charges, which changes the dynamics of the case. Even though the NYPD had prepared to transport him via helicopter to Wall Street, the feds have now stepped in and assumed control of the case. During the arraignment, the judge informed him of his rights and asked if he understood the charges against him. The judge began reading the complaint, but Mangione waived the full reading of it, acknowledging his understanding. The process took about 20 minutes, which is typical for such proceedings. It was a straightforward step in the legal process. He appeared before the judge, had the charges read to him, and verbally confirmed his understanding. This was primarily procedural and took place just moments ago. What we've been hearing is that there is a conflict between the theories behind the state and federal charges. You mentioned terrorism. That's the focus of the state charges. However, for the federal charges, the theory is based on stalking, which creates conflict. Could you explain a little more about what you're hearing? That's a great question. She's looking at 2 or 3 federal stalking-related charges alongside a murder charge. Meanwhile, on the Manhattan District Attorney's side, the focus is on terrorism. The charges of terrorism and stalking are fundamentally different. She asked the judge if this is a concurrent investigation with 2 divergent theories. The legal community is surprised by this development. Some experts have suggested that, if they were his attorney, they might prefer to have their client face federal charges instead of being convicted under the district attorney's charges, as he would likely end up at a place like Rikers Island. There are many unanswered questions. What we do know is that on January 18th, in about 3.5 weeks, there will be a preliminary hearing for the federal charges. As for the district attorney's case, we don't have any updates yet regarding arraignment or preliminary hearings. Hearing, so It does appear that the federal case,